My name is Ando, and I'm an artist, a photographer, and a member of the Undergang. Every week, I sit down with an artist, a curator, a musician, an author, or anyone else working in the creative fields, and we talk about their work, their life, and what it takes to keep fighting the good fight in our world today. Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. Alright, hello and welcome, gang. Those are the sounds of a book fair, aren't they? Actually, that's the sound of a cash register at a supermarket, but it'll all make sense in a second. We got a really special episode for you guys today. It's a little different than it usually is. We're really excited to change the format slightly. I still get to run my yap, but we spoke to a bunch of people. In fact, we spoke to an entire art book festival. A couple weeks ago here in Copenhagen, there was the 1,000 Books Art Book Festival, and it was held in a somewhat untraditional location in a Rema 1000 supermarket. For those of you who aren't aware, Rema 1000 is a Norwegian chain. They have discount wares. It's not Aldi. It's not super discounted. They're kind of in between. Affordable, shall we say. Affordable wares. And the organizers of this event talked the owner of this specific Rema 1000 into hosting the event, or at least providing space for it. So in the middle of a busy supermarket, there are 3 long tables, all filled with independent, small edition art book producers and artists and etc. And it was pretty interesting. And the shoppers there picking up their milk and etc. were also a little surprised to find an art book festival in the middle of their mundane supermarket. It should also be said that this was in the Carlsberg district of Copenhagen, which, just a little background, is the former site of the Carlsberg brewery here in Copenhagen. It's a huge plot of land which was privately owned and completely closed off to the public while the beer was being brewed, but as those things go, Carlsberg did move out of town. So there's a lot of space freed up, kind of more or less in the center of town. And so the county and city has really worked on making that a kind of artistic-based space. There's a lot of studios for rent. There's dance halls. There's a couple of cafes. They've really tried to make it a cultural part of town. So it was kind of fitting that the event was held there at the Rema 1000 in the Carlsberg, which is, it's all pretty new. A couple of years old, I'd say. So the whole thing is kind of tied together in this new cultural part of town. It's the second year that this festival has been held. There was a lot of attention. There was a lot of people. And I would say it was very well done, all in all. So like I said, for us, it was a new kind of episode. We found out, of course, that the equipment we have is not quite up to snuff. I know we apologize every time for the audio to you guys. We're still learning how to do this. However, aside from a steep learning curve, I would say it was a success. I, as the interviewer, was terrified the first day. I'll kind of tell you guys about that as we walk through it. But it was tough. It was tough and interesting and challenging, and I hope you guys get the same feeling out of it. It was all very exciting. So with no further ado, join me as we walk into the supermarket on the Saturday of the event and attempt out of nowhere to become an on-the-spot journalistic reporter. Check it out. So we're outside now, outside of Rema 1000, the supermarket. We're about to go in and check out the art book festival, 1000 books. It's pretty awesome. It's in a supermarket. You guys can pick up some ambient noises here. We're walking through the vegetable section. It's actually quite crowded. There's a lot of shoppers here buying their vegetables and their bottles of wine and everything. And then as you come towards the back, all of a sudden there's a big book fair. There's about 2 long tables, lots of people, lots of books. Here we go, right next to the frozen food. So upon walking in, the first guy we got a hold of was Flemming Ove Beck, photographer, eloquent fellow, and organizer of the event, together with 2 others. And he was, of course, very willing to talk about it. So it started off fairly straightforward. He's obviously easy to talk to, and he told us a little bit about the event itself and the story behind it, and about why they chose to have it in a supermarket.
My name is Flemming Ove Beck.
And could you tell me about the project here?
Yes, certainly. We're in Rema 1000 supermarket in the Carlsberg area of Copenhagen, where myself, my friend Johan Rosenmunter, and our friend Sarah Glein, we have, for the 2nd year running, organized an art book fair called 1000 Books, playing on the name of the supermarket that we're in, which is Rema 1000, Rema 1000.
Right.
And we've invited 28 imprints from mostly Northern Europe, but with a few outliers, to come and join us here in selling their books and meeting each other, networking, and also there's adjacent events with talks and workshops at New Shelter Playing Gallery just up the hill from here.
I think it's a really interesting project, and I think it's also great that it's here in the supermarket. What was like the starting impetus? Like, where did you guys get the idea to do this?
The idea came from, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment to the fact that everything here in the Carlsberg area seems to be art, in quotes. I mean, there's certainly a lot of serious art projects happening here that are fantastic, but there are also, definitely projects of lesser quality that kind of like use the language of contemporary art to kind of market and kind of do something else, and that are doing that quite, not exactly successfully. So we thought it was a tongue-in-cheek comment to some of that everything at the Carlsberg area was art, so of course there should be art in the supermarket as well. And then also coming from kind of just practical concerns with, a lock on the door, light, floor space, heat, basically infrastructure. And then we just asked Max, who's the grocer here, and he instantly saw what he could get out of it, namely, he could brand himself as a kind of whimsical, creative retail person and get some people through his store. So there was kind of a match made in heaven. We didn't obviously we're aware of a conceptual kind of field of tension between commerce and art, but really more than anything we just find this place really enabling. We didn't know at first that it would be a good format, but it just we found out last year that it's very unassuming, and people are good at just coming up, talking, browsing, and it's a nice atmosphere here.
Right, there's a lot of people too. I mean, it seems quite successful in terms of just visitors.
Yeah, we don't have a good overview of who comes because we're here and who just happens to pass by. But both, representatives of both those 2 segments, meaning people come to see us, but people that just happen to be shoppers. Both, representatives of both segments happen to buy books. So I think that's the ultimate validity of the concept, is that we are able to sell books to people who wouldn't otherwise buy them.
Right. Can you tell me a little bit, like, what was your how did you decide who to invite? What was the idea behind that? Did you have any system, or is it just network? Or?
Like I said, there's a Northern European focus. However, we have Rollo Press from Switzerland. We have a few imprints from the British Isles. So we wanted basically, because if you compare the scene in Northern Europe to the scene in New York City, people over there have access to one another, live in the same neighborhoods. There's so many imprints in a very small space, and they can kind of benefit from their each collective experience and collective knowledge and resources. So we wanted this to be a networking event, also where we could kind of meet the players in the field that are close to us and share experiences, become acquainted with each other, hopefully start maybe collaborative projects, or geek out about paper, printing, binding, typeface, just kind of concrete stuff like that.
Right, shop talk.
Exactly, shop talk.
The whole thing about artist books, it's really exploded in the last few years because the availability. You don't have to print 1,000 copies to even make it economically feasible. You can print, not necessarily on demand, but you can make small editions. It's more affordable and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, is that also kind of what you guys just got involved in this sort of new thing that's happening, I think, all over the world, where people with not a lot of money can make a book that looks actually really good?
Yeah, well, Johan and I have an imprint together called Lodredd Venredd.
Right.
So we have our own table here at the fair, and I don't know that any of the imprints represented here have, in quotes, a good business plan or good business model.
Right.
We're not in it for the green. We're not in it for the fat stacks because there are none.
Right.
We're in it because we love books, and I think there's something to be said for the kind of hyper ephemeral nature of the internet, where it just is changing. And especially the way you consume images. So I think books are the exploding number of artist books being published, self-published, and micro-published is a counter-action to that, where people start to appreciate the tactility and the object quality of the book and the thoughts and choices put behind something that's contained, something that's considered, and something that feels whole in a way.
Right.
As opposed to a Tumblr feed, for instance.
Right. And the fact that we're kind of drowning in images.
Yeah,
nowadays.
totally. I mean, we're consuming a perverse a number of images, and yeah, I think this is a good way of to kind of like stop and consider. And then you were talking about means of printing and means of financing. I think that there is something definitely to be said for print on demand. I think that's a bubble that's burst a few years ago. That's not as popular anymore. There are new printing technologies, digital offset, indigo printing from HP that's really, really up to par. And I think we all kind of like, maybe we start out as micro-publishers or self-publishers as not really being super duper interested in print quality and the quality of the object, but it becomes essential quite fast, and it's just being on press at an offset printing house is very addictive.
Yeah, I imagine.
So you start off with not a lot, you make some money back, you apply for some grants, you have events, and then as soon as I think everyone here wants to just. Everyone, all the publishers are willing to pay to be able to make books that are nice.
Right, to take part.
Exactly.
And I guess finally, what's your background? What led you here to doing this?
I'm a photographer, and Johan and I started curating shows and publishing because we thought that the type of photography that we were interested in, we thought that was being misrepresented in the Danish or the Copenhagen kind of art scene. So we thought, let's do something about that. And so that kind of made us or forced us into becoming curators, business people, graphic designers, type geeks, everything basically.
Right. Well, I got to commend you. I think you guys do really good work, and you do a lot of work. You guys are really busy. There's constantly something happening when you're on your imprint. Also with the space that your hand's involved in, that whole thing. And you guys really are doing it on your own.
Well, thank you first for saying that. That means a lot. There is something to be said for a partnership, definitely. We found that we just kind of work well together, and it's easier to share the workload, and it's gratifying to just make stuff happen.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks for coming.
So obviously at this point, after interviewing Fleming and standing in the corner, everyone had noticed. I was there with headphones on, with a recorder in our face. Our producer Laura Palmer was taking pictures. Some people were taking pictures of us while we were speaking to Fleming. The whole thing became quite obvious. There was no, shall we say, class about it. Or there's just no hiding. There you are with a recorder. Nobody knows who you are. You're just there. And then everyone just kind of starts eyeballing each other. So I wandered around. I tried to talk to people without the recorder. That was fine. But as soon as I even thought about putting the recorder in their face, I just got really nervous and didn't really know how to start. So eventually our producer, Laura Palmer, caught wind of Hato Press and their extremely brightly colored books, which is of course her cup of tea. So she started talking to them immediately and buying books. And, it turns out they have a resiograph, which is a home printer. It's a very interesting technology. It makes very bright colors and fluorescence. So I approached them and asked a few questions, but was still pretty nervous. And at this point, I'm reaching across the table with the recorder and sticking it in their face. And it's awkward. But they put on a good face and told us about the machine and their process. And it must be said, they have some beautiful, beautiful books. Those colors really are amazing. Absolutely. But what's the name of your guys' press?
Hatto Press. We're based in London. It's a printing house, a design studio, and the two have overlapped to kind of come together and start publishing. It's just a natural thing that happened. Started in 2009 by Ken and Jackson, and since then it's expanded into me, Melanie, and Justin.
Right. And you guys do all your printing on a risograph, is that right?
Yeah, all of it, yeah.
Why that machine specifically?
Good question.
Because it's fun as hell?
When Ken and Jackson started the company, they bought this machine. I think they were still at university when they actually bought the first risograph, mainly to print their own projects and also printing for friends. And I think that's really how it started, that they wanted to have a printing tool to be able to be autonomous and print their own projects. So that was the starting point, and then it's just continuing growing and develop into a design studio and a publishing house, which I guess was the kind of obvious continuation of the first printing work they did.
Right, that makes sense. But why books? Like, it's interesting because right now it's easy to make books. It's easier than it's ever been, and much more affordable. But that means also there's a lot of people doing it, in a lot of ways. Is it hard? Is it hard to kind of keep it working, or is it more like now it's getting so big that there's a network and there's a scene, and here you guys are in Copenhagen.
Yeah. It's stressful just running a press.
Right, God forbid it breaks down or anything like that.
Yeah, and especially with Rezo machines, they're notorious for just not working or doing what you want them to do. They have personalities, so you have to kind of work that out and then work out how you're going to achieve what a client wants. But that, I suppose, once you've got that, the actual publishing and putting stuff out there is relatively doable. It's not that hard.
Right. How'd you guys get involved to come up here and take part?
We got approached, and we just got an email just asking us to come. So we were pretty happy about that.
Such a nice feeling, huh?
Yeah, it's really, really nice. It's the first time that's happened.
Right, and I guess you start kind of meeting other presses and start...
Really, really good fun over the last few days.
Right. Well, do you guys have any books you want to highlight here? Tell us about?
There is a new sketchbook out, which is all the off-prints from the press. It's kind of reused paper that's overprinted with tons of work. They're all in completely random. You never know what you can get. And this is our newest book, James Kappa, Parts Manual.
I see you guys really like colors. But that's also kind of the strength of the resiograph, right? It's really good at making kind of pale colors.
You can get fluorescent colors, which you can't really in digital printing.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why people use it.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. Cheers.
After speaking with them, I kind of wandered around some more. I tried a German edition and unfortunately bummed the guy out so much that he couldn't really do it. I think he could just feel my nervous energy. I just was not, I've never done anything like this, just walking up to someone. I suggest trying it sometime. It's really quite the feeling, just to stick a recorder into someone's face and try to talk to them in a crowded setting in which everyone can see you. So it was interesting to say the least, and I would say I really bummed that guy out. So if you're listening, I want to say sorry. That wasn't your fault. That was my fault. And essentially after that, a couple of hours went by, and we left. I left with my tail between my legs, feeling defeated, feeling like I didn't want to do it anymore. Like it was hopeless, essentially. Like I couldn't do it. But luckily, producer Laura Palmer, being the strong producer that she is, talked me into giving it a second go. I slept on it. I listened to what I had. What can I do to feel confident enough to convey that and to engage in conversation? I mean, not only confidence, but I have to also be interesting and ask the right questions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so on Sunday, the last day of the fair, I tried again. And this time I went alone. This time I left many hours. And I made a really smart choice, which was to ask the organizers if I could come behind the table and talk to people on their side. Because reaching across their display tables was both unwieldy and awkward. I would just be like mashing their books down and reaching across, and it was all bad. Here we are outside of Rema 1000 for the 1000 Books Art Book Festival. I left yesterday with my tail between my legs. I did terribly. I won't lie. I did horribly. Apparently investigative journalism really isn't my strong suit. So I'm going in there again. I'm going to try. I'm going to just try not to be so weirded out by the fact that I'm putting a microphone in somebody's face. So here we go. And luckily meeting somebody we know, former guest of this show, Kevin Malcolm from episode 16. You can hear it on our site still. And finding out that he has a press too, called Hours Press. So we got to chat with him a little bit, start feeling more at home again. And our old friend Kevin Malcolm.
How are you?
Hey, bud. How you doing?
Good.
So we got to chat it up with our friend Kevin, and then we spoke a little bit with a guy named Bruno, who you guys will meet later. He's an Italian living in London, and he was very easy to speak with. I could speak a little circus Italian. Just a nice guy in general, and he kind of, I was mentioning to him that I didn't really feel very comfortable and I didn't know what to do, and I kind of would leave and then come back and tell him I was still having a hard time, and eventually he just looked at me and said, "Look, dude, these are nice people. Pull yourself together. Just go talk to them. Here, how about these guys?" And he pointed to the very young fellows next to him, introduced them, and I did. I just went up to him and said, "Hey, look," gulp, deep sigh. "Okay, it's on. Here we go. Hi guys, how you doing?" It's called the Undergang Armchair, which is a play on Danish and English.
Okay, yeah.
I'm half American, half Danish, so I like kind of running that weird in-between thing.
Pick up a bit of American.
Yeah. My mom's American, but my dad's Danish, so I've just kind of been back and forth the whole time. But what's the name of your guys' imprint or publishing company, or what do you even prefer to call it?
1419, or Alex and Lewis's Funtime Book Funtime Book Co-op.
Yeah. How long have you guys been doing it?
We've been doing it coming up to our fifth year.
Yeah, we started when we were about 17 or so.
That's badass.
Yeah. The first thing we ever did together was an exhibition, which wasn't very good in retrospect. But
they never are.
And the age range of artists that we showed in this exhibition was between 14 and 19. And the name's just stuck. It has nothing really to do with, it doesn't really reflect the things we put out now, but we do still focus on, photographers mainly who are making their first, serious body of work. And so it's quite an involved process, when we make stuff with people.
And you guys are both photographers too?
We are. Yeah.
What kind of work are you guys looking for?
What, in terms of the things that we like to publish? It's a good question. I suppose it's just things that...
White dudes who make work about place.
What's that?
White dudes who make work about place.
Alright.
Unfortunately, that seems to be a running trend.
Well, I mean, they're easy to find.
They're easy to find. The photography world is pretty rife with that kind of work.
Right.
I mean, the next book we're publishing is a white dude who's made work about deindustrialization in southern Illinois. But after that, I think we want to try and make some work of British females, kind of more sculptural, playful stuff. She's not even a photographer per se, but
right,
it would be interesting to move into a kind of slightly different direction.
Right.
I mean, I guess a lot of what we've released has been reflective of our own developing tastes and our learning, personally about what kind of things it is that we like and that we like to make ourselves. It's a way of learning and interacting, isn't it?
Right, because you can prepare forever and never get anything done until you fucking do it and eat shit. And
totally. And so, we're always, I think we're always kind of learning. I wouldn't say that we're, 100% satisfied with anything we've ever made, but if you were, that would kind of suck, right? You always want to be getting better,
then what?
Better. Exactly. So I think like I'd like to think that over the past 5 years we've got better at selecting projects that have some originality, and for me sincerity is very important, right? Like something that where you can really tell that the person has a kind of long-term commitment or understanding,
putting some heart into it.
Of what they're making work about, whether that is a white guy making work about a place, or whether that's something that's slightly more abstract, or working with other people's photographs. Like most of the stuff I do myself involves a lot of reappropriation and stealing other people's shit, basically. You can call it reappropriation if you want, but I steal other people's shit. Kind of bad.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. But I mean,
he steals other people's shit and makes it better.
Right.
Or worse. I don't know.
Well, always moving forward.
I don't know what I even think about it. I'm still on the fence.
But I mean, I guess a lot of the questions you guys are raising about, race and class and the art world and all that stuff, it's real issues that are out there,
Yeah, man.
And I mean, did you go to art school, or are you any sort of...
Well, at the moment we're both still at university.
Okay.
We're both about to finish, actually.
Okay. What are you guys studying?
I'm doing anthropology at the moment at Goldsmiths, so I should be very aware of the race, class, and gender issues in the art world.
And able to write long treatises on it.
I'm writing 12,000 words on it literally right now. And Alex is doing photography.
Yeah, I do photography and just sit around smoking weed and pointing a camera at things.
Is that like a technical education, or is it more like an art-based? Weed smoking.
You tell me, bro.
I see you guys have got some film cameras here.
Yeah, we do. We do have some film cameras.
I suppose that's one thing that characterises quite a lot of the work that we've published in the past. At least
initially, that was a kind of, I don't know, quite a naive kind of blind loyalty to film, which is as our tastes have evolved, it's something that has also evolved, like where things don't necessarily need to be shot in film, but it doesn't need to be that kind of blind aesthetic loyalism or whatever.
I would like to say I do still have a blind, naive dedication to film, though.
I will actually say me too. But I mean, the great thing about saying, okay, I work, analog film is the thing that ties it together, is that means you can still show any sort of work.
Yeah, sure.
It's such a loose...
I think, it doesn't matter to us so much anymore. Yeah, I think we both used to be a bit more purist about that thing, but it's just an aesthetic choice. Like, some things work better as...
I think it's more... we just give more consideration to when things would work better in shot in film or digital. Like, it's more thought goes into it now, so when you shoot film, there's a real reason behind it.
Right. Well, I mean, tools are tools, and they're good at some things and other things,
Exactly. And, I guess it probably makes sense. We make books, so we like physical things. And the physicality of the medium is always going to be important to me personally at least.
What about printing? Is that something you guys do, or is that outsourced through the millions of ways of doing that now? Or?
It's usually outsourced. We mainly use this one German printer who are pretty reliable and kind of hook us up with good deals. And kind of built a relationship with them, and that's kind of, I don't know, when you outsource your printing, you kind of need to build a relationship, and it's like a fairly personal thing.
Right.
Because there's so much to choose from, so much to go wrong, so much to go right.
Right, and you need to trust them.
You need to trust them, and you can't always be there in person as well. So you need to, you need to find people that know what they're talking about. Right, can also help you to kind of, know what you're talking about too. So it's.
Do you feel like there's kind of like a scene growing up around books, small edition artist books?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to tell because I don't know. It feels like. as we get more involved in it, the scene is growing, but maybe the scene was always there. It's hard to know kind of which came first.
Yeah, I do feel like it's kind of growing though because of the ease of printing nowadays.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's definitely an influx in the amount of book markets, at least. Like it's as well in London as well. It hasn't in the past few years. There really wasn't any kind of art book fairs. So there were only kind of super like commercial ones or like Whitechapel Gallery and shit like that.
Right, and you can afford to fuck up now. You couldn't afford to fuck up before.
Exactly. There's more room for mistakes, but maybe that's not such a good thing. I don't know.
No, I think it's great because you can just spend time. You can invest a small amount and produce quite beautiful things with not so much work, and I think it's exciting in a lot of ways. I mean, you guys have been doing it for 5 years. You guys are hardened pros by now.
Yeah, we're gonna get out of the game. I feel like we've done all we can do.
Approaching early retirement.
Right, you guys would be the Scarfaces.
We've made our money. We were only in it for the money to begin with. We made it, and now we're gonna get the fuck out. Become professional golfers. I think is the next stage.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for talking to me.
No worries, man. Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah. So now we're off and running. Really, we're starting to feel confident. We had a good talk with them. And, a theme started to emerge. Young people, often friends, often art students, people who are interested and curious and enjoyed making books. And it seemed like a lot of it happened spur of the moment, or it just happened because of one and then built on to two, and then the ball kind of got rolling. And in their case, in these guys' case, they seemed to be very casual about it. After I spoke with them, the young guy just got up and said, okay, I'm going to go watch a soccer game now, and bailed. And that makes you think maybe this isn't that professional, but if you look at their website, they have fantastic work. So clearly they're working hard too, but it was a very relaxed atmosphere, you could say. And right next to them was a fellow sitting by himself, and I just decided to go with it. So I went over and introduced myself. What's the name of your press?
Bronze Age Editions.
Yeah, and how long have you guys been doing it?
Since probably 2011, summer of 2011.
So do you feel like you're over the first hump, or is it still like the beginning phases here?
There's never really a hump. It's just we've always just sort of worked with people that we want to and make books that we want to see, and that's pretty much it.
So there's the mission is just the process of doing.
The mission is to work with artists whose work we want to see in books, basically, and whose work we like and think other people should know about these people, and Yeah. You told me earlier that the two of you, you and your partner don't even live in the same place. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of a hard process to run? Oh, you got a book sale. Pause interview. All right, we're back. So now you're rich. How does that feel?
It's great. More money.
But no, I was asking about the fact that you guys don't even live in the same city, and the fact that you run a press together.
I used to live in London as well, and when we both lived in the same city, it was a lot easier, obviously, to we'd meet up and sit down and talk about stuff. But now I think since I live in a different city, we sort of take on projects and sort of nurse them and work on them and sort of take charge on them. But we're always sort of talking about things and getting the other one to help and put their input in and help design and lay out and stuff like that. So
right, I imagine some nice things come of that instead of, certain ideas can have time to develop before being,
And we can also put a little sort of a personal touch on it.
And what are you guys working on right now? What's coming up?
What's coming up? Pretty slow right now, actually. We're both really busy with other things.
Right.
But I think we're going to do a photo book by actually a young Danish photographer who lives in Glasgow named Albert Elm.
I know Albert.
Yeah, okay.
He worked for Jacob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've known him for a few years now, and so he's
great.
Yeah, he's a great guy and a great photographer. So I think we're going to do a book with him, and then right now that's pretty much all we have.
Are you guys artists too, or are you guys mostly?
Yeah. Well, Justin mainly works with bookmaking and printmaking because, like I said, he works at Hato Press, and so his time is sort of swallowed up by that. But I go to the art school in Glasgow, and I make paintings and collages and things like that.
I'm sure it takes a lot of time too.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to me.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks.
So obviously I started seeing kind of a trend. Young people, friends, art students, like I said. It was interesting, though, that they don't even live in the same place. You could see it took a different kind of operation if you don't even live in the same city. So, clearly there's some dedication to doing the project. And they knew Albert Elm, who I know from here in Copenhagen. He worked with our former guest, Jacob Aue-Sabol. And he's a really nice guy. So shout out to Albert from right here. Up-and-coming photographer out there. He's studying in Glasgow. After talking to several people, we realized that maybe it was a good idea to see if we could speak to somebody from the actual supermarket. So we asked around a little bit, and even though it was Sunday, we found out that Max, the owner of the store, was in fact there. So we asked if we could speak to him, and he was a very boisterous fellow, and that was fine. So we waited patiently while he was carrying bottles out, and then we got to ask him a few questions about why on earth would you have an art book festival in a supermarket like this? Cool. So what's your name?
My name is Max, M-A-X.
And you're the grocer here at this Rainbow 1000.
I'm the owner of the shop here.
Okay. And what about, you've got an art book festival in the middle of your grocery store here. How did that happen?
Oh, it happened once a day. Johan just came by and asked me if I was up to something new in a grocery store. And I said, always. I'm in Vesterbro here, the old Carlsberg area. So it's a part of the deal. I have to be very offensive in this kind of spectacular things.
Right. Well, I think it's great. And there's a lot of people coming through, too. But it's kind of untraditional,
Sure it is.
So you didn't hesitate at all? You didn't think, oh, this is weird, or this will bother my customers, or anything like that?
Sure it did. But the most important thing was that Johan was very... was serious about it, because I didn't want any just to come on by and come with 2 books and so on. I wanted to be serious and do it 100%. Right. That was the big question for me.
Right. Well, I think it worked, because all week and all weekend it's been, the words Rainbow 1000 have been said a lot inside the art world, at least.
Yeah.
Can you tell, is there any difference in terms of how the sales are going this weekend or anything like that, how the customers are reacting? Can you tell?
Yeah, sure. The customers have been very positive. The customers that used to come around every day in Copenhagen, in this area, people don't shop for more than one day. So they come often 5 or 6 times a week. And a lot of them told me that's very positive. Why are you doing this? What are you up to? Is it money in for you? And I said, no, it's just for the fun's sake. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. But they say it's a good way to meeting people from the book art culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. I just wanted to ask and see what your side of it was.
Sure. You're welcome.
Yeah. There was also another type of publisher, though. We spoke with Library Man Editions, and they were much more calm and cool and somewhat aloof, very Scandinavian-styled publishers. And they were very much more, established, I guess you should say, or they had the feeling of being established. And they worked out in New York and Stockholm, and, we spoke a little bit about that. But it seems like they were on a different level, and that could be seen in the books that they published, really. It was a really high quality, a lot of hardbacks. They had a magazine, a publication about film. You could just feel that they had been at it for a while and had some experience. So we got a hold of Tony, the founder, right before he was on the way to the airport to go back to Stockholm. And he shared a few thoughts also about his native city of Stockholm. But yeah, I'm just curious about what's the name of your imprint?
The name of the imprint is Library Man.
How long have you guys been going?
Since around 2008.
Okay, and you guys are based in Sweden?
Yeah. Well, we're between Stockholm and New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a pretty established thing you guys got going on. What's kind of the angle you guys work on? What are you interested in working with?
Personal angle. Everything, we initiate all the projects ourselves. So it's everything from, we have a film magazine, and we also do monographs and stuff like that, but everything is initiated by us. So all some of the concepts are actually art directed by ourselves as well.
You guys are inviting people to come work with you, or you guys are setting themes, or?
Well, it depends on the artist. Some things are more collaborative, and some is not, I guess. Some are, we don't really accept submissions, so we have to reach out to people, and people that we worked with previously, they come back and we do more stuff and new projects.
How did you guys get involved with the with this fair specifically?
Well, they invited us here, so we came along, and we normally only do New York Art Book Fair.
How is New York these days for art books? I haven't been there for many years after.
It's a paradise.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it an exploding thing? I mean, more and more people are making books?
Yeah, definitely, but also more important that people are more excited to buy books as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so nice because it's like three big stories or 3 floors at PS1 in Long Island City, and I mean, the entire target group is collected at the same spot.
Right.
And also, there's so many publishers, and they're actually really horny on books too. So it all makes sense, and we clear our table every time.
And it's an affordable way to buy a limited edition artwork, a curated piece.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's always interesting to do something special for that fair. I mean, this is a very small fair, and it's the smallest we've been to. But we were so close, so we figured that we can be a part of it too.
Right. Well, I think it's a good initiative. It's only the second year, but but it seems like people are coming, and some people are buying, and there's a lot of interest.
Definitely. I mean, and definitely people are interested, and also it takes time. I mean, 2 years is a baby.
Right.
And give it a few years, and it will be bigger and. Yeah, they have to rebuild this supermarket probably.
Right.
Yeah.
What about Stockholm? Is it kind of similar to Denmark in terms of what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, Stockholm sucks ass in all possible ways.
So why are you guys working out of there? I mean, you say New York and Stockholm.
Yeah, I'm always in between. But, Stockholm has always been my base.
Right.
And I always travel a lot and coming back, and I'm very efficient there. And I'm very productive.
Right.
Because A to B is so short. The distances, and like one day in New York is actually 3 days in Stockholm.
Right.
And then you have to just widen your horizon and get the fuck out here and then.
Right. Or use both situations to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And. I grew up in Sweden, and it has its perks with a lot of social and political factors as well.
Sure.
And it's a good productive place to be, because you can do a lot of things very quick and take your time on it too. Because when it's winter, that's the only thing you can do.
Right.
To snooze up with a partner or work.
Right, or drink yourself to death.
Exactly. And I prefer the latter.
What about, did you start the Library Man? Was this your project to start with?
Yeah.
And why? What was the impetus to get started?
Well, I had an imprint before that was only my last name in publishing, Ceretic Publishing.
Okay.
And,
so you've always been interested in books?
Yeah. And from that, that was more of it started in a photographic guideline, but also the aesthetic was drawn away from it, kind of. Well, it departed into more like drawing or fashion and all that. And I wanted to focus entirely on photography. Yeah.
Are you a photographer yourself?
No.
But
I'm an art director, so I have to take photos when I have to.
Right.
Yeah. But cool. So everyone in the project is freelance art directors and graphic designers.
Right.
So, and we work with very different things, and we work with bigger things than our little baby here.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Well, thank you.
So we started noticing that each individual publisher had their own angle, kind of creation myth, their story, their way of approaching. And so even though there were similarities between their stories, each one had their unique way of doing things. Once we really got going and were on a roll, we decided to speak to a very shy-looking fellow who turned out to work for a publisher which had an interesting angle, which was namely having art books as a exhibition space on their own, as an art hall. And this was their thing. This was their angle for doing it. And we started noticing also there was a running theme that people often started because maybe a designer or an artist wanted to get something published and realized what a pain in the ass it is to try to get someone else to publish it for you. Several people decided it was simply easier to do it on their own. And that's how the ball got rolling. What's your name?
My name is Joris Doks.
And you're from Belgium?
Belgium, from Ghent, Belgium. Yes.
Okay. Right, that's different, right? Ghent is, you got your own language and it's kind of a...
No. Well, we speak 3 different languages in Belgium. I'm from the Dutch-speaking part, and Ghent is just one city in the Dutch-speaking part.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw some great films from Ghent, actually.
Yes, we have our own film festival.
Yeah.
But, there's now the Broken Circle Breakdown, which nearly won an Oscar. Which was made in Ghent. Maybe that's the one you remember.
No, I saw one a couple of years ago. I don't remember what it was called. It was about a truck driver and a woman that met each other.
It's like aanrijding in Moscow, which means like collision in Moscow, which is a part in Ghent, and it's about a truck driver coming back home after Italy, falling in love, stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a good movie. But books, man, books. What's the name of your imprint, you say?
It's Merpaper Kunsthalle, which we try to be a paper Kunsthalle. There are these Kunsthalles in Germany, which are like non-commercial galleries for exhibitions on contemporary art. And our idea is to have an exhibition inside a book, where the book is a place not for a reproduction of art or reproduction of pictures, but for real work itself.
It's its own exhibition vehicle.
Yes, indeed.
Cool, that's a good idea. How do you guys find who to work with?
Well, mainly people come to us.
Okay.
But we've been active since 2005 under this name, so we've built some reputation. So it's not that easy. Last year we published 50 books, so we get quite busy.
Did you say 50 books?
50 books. It's like a book a week.
Wow.
This year it's a little slower, which isn't bad. But we here we present our artist books, but we also have more research-based books, more like museum catalogs, more publications we make for PhD publications. So it's not only these hard-boiled artist books, it's a bit of everything, but it's always related to the contemporary arts.
That's a great idea, actually. I really like that. How did you guys get started in 2005? What was the impetus to say, okay, now we're going to be a book publisher?
Well, it all started by Luc de Rijke, who was a graphic designer and always working with artist books and artists. But when he was working with them and he finished the project, wanted to bring it to a publisher, he found out that many publishers had their limitations about how non-commercially valuable something can be.
Right.
So to him it was easier to start his own publishing house, to be completely free of any commercial restrictions, and that's how we can make any book we want. And still there is this graphic design agency connected to the publishing house, which does a lot of the work for the books, but it's not exclusive. Right. We also work with other designers or books who are designed entirely by the artists themselves. So it's a mix of everything.
It sounds like, it kind of coincides with about the time where it became somewhat affordable to print books too in small editions. It used to be you had to print 1,000 copies minimum, or even 10,000 copies depending on what it was. So I guess it was kind of the right time too to get started. But how has it changed since then? So it's almost 10 years you guys have been doing it, which is longer than most people I've talked to around here. How has everything changed since then?
Well, to be completely honest, I've only been working for this publishing house since last September, so about 7 months. So maybe I'm not an expert on how it's changed. Well, what I can say is that the interest has grown, which I think there's like this economical law of question, and I don't know how to say it in English, but the more people need it, the more you can produce.
Right.
And I think we can thrive on that. That also in Belgium, like now here in Denmark, there's this wonderful opportunity to come together and talk and think about it. But you see it everywhere. The artist book gets more recognition. people are working with, trying to think about it. So I think that kind of helps producing them as well.
Right. Well, I mean, it's an affordable way, like you say, to buy a whole exhibition. You know, for 50 euros or whatever it is, you can get an entire show, not just one work, and use it how you may, whether you want to put it down on the coffee table or however it is. Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
All right. It was a pleasure. No problem.
After speaking to mostly young people who had publishing houses or groups or collectives or however you want to call it, we also met Joachim Schmidt, who is a German artist. He doesn't have a publishing house. He's just an artist who works with books and has for many years. And so it was interesting to talk to him because he is a seasoned vet. He's been at it before print on demand, before it was affordable. I mean, there were other ways of doing it. He'll tell you about it. But before the standard of affordability was raised, I guess you could say. But he had a fascinating story, and he certainly has been at it for a long time. First of all, what's your name?
Joachim Schmidt.
And you are a self-publishing, essentially.
I'm a self-publishing artist from Berlin. I've been making books for many, many years.
Yeah, you kind of have the feeling of being the man who's been in the game for a while, who knows, a lot of the people I'm talking to, they've been up for 3 or 4 years. You've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I made my first books when I was a student, and that's some years ago.
Right.
And ever since, I've been making books altogether, maybe 150 or so.
Wow. So why books? What is it about the format that attracts you?
Well, I think the book is the perfect form to create a meaningful context about one segment of the world, a proposal how to look at that, and then it's replaced by the next proposal, or another proposal is being added. But it's a pretty good form to. It's also I like the way that books can circulate. They're multiple, they are affordable.
Right.
They have lots of advantages. They're not the only form, but they're a pretty useful form, and I'm quite confident that they will not be replaced by anything else anytime soon.
Are you not going to move into making ebooks?
I'm experimenting with that, but I don't think that they're going to replace books. They work on a different register, and they will be supplements. It's like video games did not replace traditional games. People still play cards and whatever, but we just have more options.
Right, and people do appreciate objects, and treasure objects as they have a kind of preciousness which with digital virtual things don't have.
Well, that's one aspect, but the other aspect is books have a number of tremendous practical advantages. They don't need batteries. You don't need an electricity outlet. They don't need updates.
Right.
And all that stuff that makes life with electronic devices sometimes so frustrating. Not so for books.
I wanted to ask you too, how has making books changed since you've been at it for a while? There's been a renaissance in terms of the way you produce books nowadays.
Well, everything changed and nothing changed. I mean, when I started making books, that was pre-computer times. We used paper and scissors and glue, and a typewriter or a Xerox copy machine or whatever.
Right.
And now, of course, it's digital print. But at the end, the thing that counts is the book. Is it any good or isn't it? Is it good? Is it interesting? Does it raise interesting questions or not?
Sure.
And the way how it's made is a secondary thing. In a way, it's much easier now to make books because digital print is ubiquitous. It's quite affordable.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is the fact that it's so easy to make.
It's and sometimes it's maybe too easy. So we see lots of books, including I did them myself, that are made quite rapidly. So our notion of what a book is and what a book does changes because it does not have the authority anymore that it used to have when it went through an editorial process. I mean, you just can make a book in no time with no money.
Right.
So I think our understanding of the book is going to change, but.
Right, I mean, that's kind of the feeling you get here is that people can jump into it on a whim. And I'm not undermining the fact that it's a lot of work to run a press. It clearly is. But like you say, you can produce a book in almost no time for not that much money. You don't have to bet everything every time you make a book, you know.
Yeah, sure. And the more important it is, you know, like look at it and does it raise any interesting questions? Does it touch you one way or the other? And if not, just leave it aside.
Right. You told me yesterday about my favorite book of the ones you have here on the table, which is you as Martin Parr and Martin Parr as you. What's the title exactly?
Joachim Schmidt is Martin Parr is Joachim Schmidt.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? It was a good story.
It's something also done out of it was a spontaneous decision. I've been friends with Martin for a long time, and we met in Berlin, and he had just gotten his VIP pass for the Berlin Art Fair, but had no opportunity to go there, so he gave it to me, and I went to the art fair pretending to be Martin Parr, just with the name badge Martin Parr.
Right.
And of course, being Martin, you have a camera around your neck, and then I started taking photographs, more or less Martin Parr style, and in the evening I called him and said, well, listen, Martin, I was you today, you want to be me tomorrow? And so we swapped identities for a day, and then we put the two things together in a little book, which I think is quite hilarious.
I do too. I appreciate the humor. In fact, a lot of your books here have a lot of humor in them. They're not, I mean, obviously they're dealing with real subjects, but there's a lot of kind of jokes and playing with content and playing with the idea of images and where they come from and all that stuff.
Yeah, aren't we German famous for our humor?
Just as famous as the Danes are.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's great. Yeah, thank you for talking to me.
Welcome.
The other thing that we noticed was that the technique for printing kind of changed. There was, of course, Hato Press and their risograph. Some of the others, they actually used Hato Press's risograph, so they were both printer and publisher. And then there was other people who just had whatever resources were available, they used that. So a laser printer and found paper, fine, go for it. And so the variation in these techniques really start to reflect upon the fact that whatever way you find to do it, usually it was a solution which enabled you to do it as fast as possible, to not have to wait for approval from anybody, to not have to wait for money or anything like that, but just ways of getting work done, making output. And so this guy, Maunus, really worked on that level. No reason to wait, no reason for anything. You got a printer, hustle some paper, make it happen, go. All right, here we are once again. What's your name?
Maunus.
Maunus, and what's the name of your publishing company or imprint or?
Urban Food.
How long have you been doing it for?
This project is only 1 year old.
Okay, exciting.
I've been working with this kind of way of doing books with my friends in other constellations, but under other names for the last 10 years.
Okay, I was going to say, because you have a lot of books out for just being 1 year old. But this is just a new
1 year I did 10 books.
Holy cow.
But it's like not all of mine works. I'm an artist, but
okay, so
I also invite other people that I think do interesting stuff to work with in the format of a book. And cool. I mostly laser print everything myself in the studio in small editions to make it more fast and economic possible, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the magic.
Sometimes I don't even know. I don't even have to finance it because we can find some paper somewhere.
Right.
Just feed the laser printer and do edition of 40, whatever.
That's amazing.
So we make a small exhibition like this one, you know.
Right.
Untitled covers by this Danish photographer Mune.
Okay.
And she did this photograph of book covers from a collection of books. She what do you call
inherited
from her granddad. And she photographed all these books, you know.
Wait, are you telling me these are laser prints?
This is a laser print on an Xerox machine.
They look fucking killer. That's amazing.
So we only did like, I can't even remember. And I somewhere hassled the paper. We did
250.
Yeah.
That's wild. So why books? What got you interested in making books?
It's like making an exhibition in another space.
Right.
It's a space that is more accessible when you have the printer in your studio. So also when you think, okay, how should I exhibit maybe these whatever photograph collages? So if it's image based, it's really easy to.
Right, just to make it happen. You don't have to wait for anyone to say yes.
And fuck the exhibition and just make the book.
Right.
So,
is that something you can get the state to help you support doing projects like this, or is it all?
You can, but
I
mostly just finance it by myself.
Fucking do it.
But I use this. I make this platform now. Just to have some kind of, semi-professional thing that I can present people, also to make them work with it.
Right.
So I don't just come as a person and like, hey, do you want to do something?
I like cool stuff.
But I was like, hey, this platform wants to work with you, but this platform is me.
Right. So that sounds kind of similar to what
like
this podcast is.
This book?
Yeah.
It's an image-based research on it's like a ritual that you do when you finish high school in Denmark. It's called Translocationstour, when you ride around city getting drunk, visit all the families.
And everyone's yelling
class.
off the back of a bus kind of thing.
And I participated in this ride 3 years ago to make a still film movie. Where I just grouped all the parts of this ritual into, So for 20 pictures, you would only see people waving at the bus.
Right.
Next 20 or 50 or 100, you only see flowers at the tables. You will see only where they lived, all these fucked up kids, and you will see what they were eating.
Right.
But I made the film 2011, but now I found out some woman at the University of Denmark, science, she's working with the same ritual, but her access to it is like historical way, science, So we shared interest and made this publication from Urban Food, where she did the preface.
She wrote an essay about it.
Historical, when it started, how it developed, everything. So it's also a way to work with people for me, It's like a meeting place.
Right, it's a good place to engage. Well, that's great. What's next? You've been at it for a year. What's coming up next? More books?
Yeah, I don't know.
Keep going?
Yeah, I have some ideas, but right now, just chill, do some artworks, maybe some exhibitions and stuff.
Right. Cool. Well, I mean, I think it's an amazing format, and people are also becoming more and more interested. A lot of people came by to check it out. People actually bought books.
I use it also interest. I try to push other into,
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these books here in this table are all published for the same exhibition. Curated exhibition where half of the artists participating were only invited to participate in this exhibition in the format of a book.
Okay, so it wasn't
and the exhibition took place in a hotel apartment. So this book is only like one edition. And this artist had an idea, made this performance that is documented in the apartment and just published in this one book.
Right. So it's a type of time. You're documenting history and time and meeting and working and
just use the platform to encourage other artists to work with book format. And I just helped her publish the book, and bind it.
Right.
And this book was just lying in the bedroom in that apartment during the exhibition.
I'm really blown away by the quality of the fact that it's just laser prints and that they look just amazing. It looks really good.
We can do good laser printers now.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm getting old, I guess. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Welcome.
And I must really underline, those prints look amazing. I had no idea that a laser printer could look that good. Had someone asked me if those were laser prints, I would have said absolutely not. So if you're here in Copenhagen, I would contact his imprint. He can have books made with a very low overhead cost. And that was one of the other things that kept coming up was money. Waiting for money, applying for money, business plans. It seemed pretty obvious that almost nobody there made a living off of just selling books. Some were artists, some were graphic designers, Perhaps some lived off of designing books for others or printing for others, accepting commissions. But clearly it was an act of love for most of them, and that also might explain why a lot of them were quite young. However, now we're going to meet Bruno, the Italian I mentioned earlier, and he, as a curator, started this project, Self-Publish Be Happy, which eventually started publishing books as well. And they have developed a different method for trying to sell their books, which was a book club. The old subscription model, pay and you will receive a book in the mail a couple times a year.
You ready? I'm loosened up. I'm ready to go.
Did you have a couple of drinks?
No, but I just got over it and started talking to people. So what's the name of the company you work for? Did you found it? What's the story?
Well, I founded one organization which is a curatorial project called Self-Publish Be Happy in 2010. And that was, it still is, it's around artist publications. So artists make books, they send it to us, they become part of this collection, the collection gets online, and then travel like a mobile library. We organize workshops, and there's a daily blog around publication, and mostly about emerging photography.
Okay, so you guys essentially are collecting and building some sort of library of homemade books, I should say, or at least, self-published books.
Yes, yes. That's right. I mean, they're not homemade. I mean, some of them are homemade. So it goes from a zine that is literally homemade, as in printed at home, and to, quite sophisticatedly printed other kind of books.
Right. You got a customer. All right, here we go. Attempt number 2 with Bruno. I was asking you about, you were telling me about your curatorial project.
Self-Publish Be Happy, yes.
Yeah.
So out of Self-Publish Be Happy, then we started SPBH Editions, which are basically a small publishing house. And they're two, they come from the same place, but they're quite different, distinct projects.
Right.
So what we have here is a selection of SPBH Editions, which one of the bulk is the SPBH Book Club. So people subscribe to a membership and they get a book every 4 months. They are made by artists just for the members of the club or within the format of the club, and they don't know what they get.
That's a good idea. So, you pay a monthly membership or a yearly membership?
You pay a yearly membership and you get 3 volumes.
Okay. And has that been a sustainable model for publishing and disseminating books?
Well, that was a model that came from a long time ago. I mean, that was the way, for example, in Germany, they restarted circulating literature after Second World War. So people didn't, the libraries were burned down, houses didn't have any more books. So they started having books circulating in giving people memberships, and they would get, classics of literature.
But it must be somewhat new for art books. I mean, it's a different beast. Rather than getting a Charles Dickens book,
Yeah, it's a different thing. I mean, it's within that kind of literature tradition and the tradition of kind of serial publications.
Right.
So, artists will make publication that will come out regularly, and publications, objects.
Right.
In addition, so it's something in between the two.
Right. What's the process you guys go through to decide what to publish?
Mostly we choose artists that we want to work with, and then they start, they engage within the format of the book club. This is the book club. It's slightly different with the other publications. So, for example, we published something called Autonomy by an artist called Lorenzo Vitturi. And in his case, I knew him for a long time. I was aware that he was working on this project for a couple of years, and I seen it, and we were we helped him developing the book in the form that then became the final product, I guess.
Right.
With the book club, it's a different kind of engagement. People play within the format of the club, which has, the book have a certain kind of aesthetic and size, even though within that size and there's people on the inside that do all sorts of different things.
So content-wise, it's pretty open.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why books? I mean, why did you originally get involved with books?
Sort of by accident, really. I was working in magazines first, and then a lot of people that I was working with at that time, they became well-known photographers, and then I got a job in a publishing house that were doing art books, and then I started lecturing at college. I left the kind of job in the publishing world, and after that, I decided to start Self-Publish Be Happy as a kind of curatorial project. And then from Self-Publish Be Happy, funny enough, I kind of went back for where I came from, which is making publications. Right. But the three, Self-Publish Be Happy, my work as an academic and SPBH edition, they sort of kind of complement each other.
Right, well, that's kind of what I'm finding nowadays, is that nobody really does one thing anymore. People are really engaged on many different levels, which I think is good, because there's less segregation between different levels of engagement in the art world,
Yeah, and I think also, I don't think, possibly there's some exceptions, but most people here are quite hybrid type of publishers.
Right.
So they're not just publishers, not in a bad way, but what they do goes in different directions. There's a lot of artists that also make publications, or designer, or musician that do publications, and that sort of kind of give a certain kind of freedom as well. So you don't need to make your living out of selling books, which is fucking impossible.
Right. Well, I mean, on paper, it looks like a horrible business idea to work with.
It's a good one. I think it's a good one. No.
But I mean, surprisingly, nobody here has talked anything about ebooks or anything like that.
It's a wrong place to ask about this.
Sure, but you'd think there would be some discussion about it. But at the same time, I'm a film photographer, and that's just getting bigger and bigger now. It's like vinyl, record players. There are people who are more interested in the object.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really the wrong place, because people that come here make and buy objects.
Right.
So that doesn't mean that prevent them to think about something digital. But I don't think most of the time when people like us talk about digital, it's really boring, because it's sort of like talking about a fantasy land. We're not really, most of us are not really interested or motivated in doing anything with digital.
Right.
And it's quite complicated, because the problem with digital editions is that they're really expensive to make. If you don't want to do like a glorified PDF,
right,
then you're talking about a sort of investment in money and knowledge that I don't think people here have.
Right.
So it's a sort of promised land. But
well, I mean, it's certainly rewarding also to make that object and then hold it in your hands when it's done. I think for a lot of artists, that sort of creation is very important to the end, to what they do.
Yeah.
I've built websites before, and when it's done, you're just like, oh, I guess it's done. It doesn't have that finality of tearing open the box from the printers.
Yeah.
And having a stack of fresh books.
It's also, these are collectible objects.
Right.
So it goes into a tradition and a marketplace.
Right.
That is pretty established. The digital one is sort of Far West. Apart from, if you start working with Apple for the Apple Store or whatever,
Sure.
But still, even that.
Right. All right. Well, what's coming up in 2015 for the publication? Are you guys
We're still at 14. Are you crazy? Still a lot.
All right. What's coming up next? Let's put it that way.
Well, we're working with Johan, who runs the space here.
Right, and he runs his own imprint too.
He runs his own imprint. He's an artist himself. So we have a book with him. We're starting a text and image series of books. We're working on the next book club book, which is a secret. I can't tell what it is.
Indeed. People just need to buy a subscription, right?
They have to buy the subscription, yes. Or they can buy the books separately, pay 10 times more.
Right, you hear that, people?
Yeah, exactly.
So just moving forward,
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Cheers.
So at this point, it was all starting to wind down. I felt like I had actually done my job. I was feeling quite victorious, to be honest. Like I'd really done something with my time and kind of overcome a mountain I didn't think I could overcome. You know, and again, like most things, it's just a matter of doing it and seeing what the consequences are. Opening the door you're afraid of and finding out there's nothing behind it. As it was all winding down, I was talking to Max, the owner of the supermarket from earlier, and a man from a Swiss publisher named, as far as I can tell, Kodoji Press, came by to give him a gift and to say thank you for providing the space. And Max was, of course, touched and happy, and you could just tell also that worlds were meeting at that point. Max would never have gone to an art book festival. He would never have bought it. He says it straight out. But clearly he's happy to kind of bridge that gap and to see what is this world and what's happening. And the book the Swiss publisher gave was about food and leftover food on plates. You know, and you could see a spark. You could see this temporary bridge being built on the spot. And it was quite beautiful to watch.
Homemade out of the rest of the dinners, these faces. So they start to starring back to you and they create their own characters.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it fits.
Funny, yeah. It fits in my world. Perfect.
Maybe
thank
you have
you.
a girl or a boy or whatever.
Perfect, thank you. Oh,
was a display copy. Yeah, it was part of the Animism exhibition, and Animism it's about when things getting their own life.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
There wasn't a good day. There was a bad meal.
You couldn't go out for a while with not getting asked. And here's another one. It's about photographic quotes. It was an exhibition in Switzerland. In the first 3 pages, you have an index, and then there comes the art pieces from the exhibition, but also text quotes. It's always about when someone quoted on something or when someone quoted with the artwork on something else.
Okay.
And it is a perfect restroom publication.
Okay,
because you
perfect.
Can go in and look something and look it up who said it.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, this I would like to give you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much.
It was so cool.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a nice trip back home.
See you next time.
And there we go. You can see you got some free books just like that. Oh, it's perfect timing.
Yeah. I probably never bought these by myself, so it will be funny reading.
Right, and it's the perfect mixture of something, you know, people who wouldn't normally do this sort of thing and people who do.
Yeah, sure. And that was what Johan and I made from the start.
Right.
Giving people a new experience in what art books actually is.
Right, right. And everyone seems to be really happy about the location and all that.
Yeah, cool.
So as it all started wrapping up, I could see the people just started chatting together. I think the horse trading began. I mean, obviously, if you love books and you get a chance to meet the people around you who are making books, you're going to talk to them, you're going to network, you're going to trade and buy books. There was a lot of back and forth, and I think that was one of the highlights of the event for the people, creating community on that level. Artist books have a long history going back many, many years. It seems like the first kind of recent memory art book was made by William Blake and his wife. You can read about it on our page. We'll put a link to the Wikipedia article. And then during World War II, it really started taking off, artist handmade books. But it seems to us like there's a renaissance of sorts. The ease of reaching a certain quality, all these things have made it very possible to make books at a relatively low cost. And then with the internet and social networking and all this stuff, you're able to really reach out and reach a bigger audience. So it seems like this world has sprung up. Tony from Library Man was talking about a fair in New York, which has 3 stories of booths of art books. This, I'm not sure, was possible 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It seems really that this is an expanding world. So, in short, if you're interested in making art books, I think it's more accessible than you think. And I think it's also easier to meet other people who are doing it and make baby steps into that world. The future is bright for artist books, and you can do it any way. Old school, new school, Xerox, HP printing, the whole shebang. The whole thing seems very available. I personally was thinking a lot about books and what they mean and about the objects and about the weird place that they exist in terms of not quite being an art object and not quite being your average book, and then the fact that they were being sold in a supermarket. And I actually think the whole thing got summed up very nicely by Joris from the Meer Paper Kunsthal, the Belgian publisher who makes exhibitions inside of books, essentially. He really summed it up quite nicely.
The way I see it, the artist book has always been a difficult thing because you can't really consider it as a book, even though it's been published, people put it on their shelf, people put it in a library, but that's not really where an artist book belongs. And on the other hand, it also doesn't really belong in a museum. If you put it under a glass table, it's just an object, and that's not the way it functions. So the fact that we're now presenting these artist books in a supermarket makes sense in the idea that a supermarket is as good a place as any because there is no real place for an artist book to be presented.
Right, it exists in that weird in-between world.
It can exist when you're reading it just yourself, one-to-one, but when you want to present it to more people, it's very difficult to find a way to do it. And the supermarket isn't like the ideal utopian place for artist books, but it's good to stress that there is no such place yet, and we could do this in a supermarket or in a factory or in a laundry room or whatever, but because there is no real place for the artist book.
Right, imagine the day when we have a supermarket just for artist books that's always open, 24 hours a day.
Yes, but then again, it would also devalue the artist book.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's that in-between, space that artist books exist in.
Yes, which also makes them interesting and makes you wonder, do we really need to lock them down in a place? Maybe they can just keep being difficult and keep being misunderstood and keep being this strange little thing. Now there's a lot of talk and thinking about it. But maybe it's not always so bad not to understand something and just let it fall between the lines or something.
Right, and it isn't for everybody.
No, indeed, it's a difficult subject because it's so cheap and so mass-produced, but still it's to an artist it's very special and crucial, but to the public they don't really perceive it that way.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, was the 1,000 Words Book Festival. I'm feeling drained. It was a lot of work. It's a whole different kind of editing. This is really more of a public radio kind of show. So it's interesting for us to do this. It's a lot of work with limited resources, but I think it was very exciting. And it was exciting for me to overcome some personal hang-ups I had with doing that kind of work. We've put together a fine page in this episode's show notes with links to all the presses that we spoke with, to the organizers, to the history of art books. Everything is there, everything you could want. So I really encourage, if you guys were interested in checking out these links and this festival. It'll be back again next year. It'll be stronger than ever. I'm assuming it'll be back in the supermarket. It was a success according to all parties involved, and I think it's just going to get better and better, just like this podcast. I'd also like to thank anybody who listened. I really want to ask you guys to help us out, especially on this episode, this very fine special edition. If you like the show, please tell a friend. Please mention it on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else you frequent on the interwebs. We would also really appreciate it if you subscribe on iTunes, maybe write a little review that helps us be seen by other people. Give us a couple of stars. And finally, we've been accepted onto the Stitcher network. There will be a link to that as well. This is a podcast network, and they also have a rating system and a review system, which, if you have the time, we would be very, very happy if you'd help us out. Thank you. That was today's episode, produced by the Undergang Armchair, with special help from producer Laura Palmer today. Big hand to her. Intro and outro music provided once again by Heavy Links. You can catch info about them on our About page. You can find us on Twitter. The Undergang is our handle. You can email us, and please do holler@undergang.net is where you'll find us. And that leads us, of course, to our wonderful home on the web, www.undergang.net. Meet us, holler at us, catch us next week. It's been fun.